listening to The Daily Show.
The Daily Show?
The Daily Show.
The Daily Show.
On Men's Radio.
Men's Radio.
Men's Radio.
Men's Radio.
With Russ Kane.
By Jiminy Crickets, that'll be me. Morning, everybody. Hi, Russ Kane, Daily Show, Men's Radio Station. It's a nightmare out there at the moment. I'm just deciding whether I'm going to go on a march or not go on a march. I don't think the security is going to be good enough because I don't trust the police here, and I certainly don't trust the people who would be out for trouble. But I'm thinking about it. Anywho, you know him, you love him. Oh, hang on. We just say this just before we introduce him. Hello, Barry. Wait, Barry. And to Robert Van Buren. Okay, right, good. You know him. You love him. He is the king of everything within a 500-meter radius of the Tolworth Tower. Ladies and gentlemen, Neil Long.
Welcome to Monday.
It is Monday, indeed. How was your weekend, fella? Was it all right? Is it okay?
It was good. I had a DJ gig Saturday night and a comedy gig on Friday.
Everybody in the
Why do people do that? Why do people do that when you
That's
say
all I
DJ?
know about being a DJ. I don't know
go up
anything.
to a cabbie and do this, or a dairy
Yes, you
farmer
do.
and do that.
You do.
I don't
You
get
do.
it.
You do. Françoise Pascal, bonjour. Ça va? Oui, merci. Pas mal, hein? Françoise Pascal. Right. We have a lovely guest. A man I've known for many, many years. I'm not going to talk before I introduce our guest today. I just can't start talking about what's going on the horrific attack on Israel. It's disgusting. It is led by a barbaric death cult, bunch of maniacs. It's horrendous. And if I start talking about it, I will talk about it for the next 2 hours solid. So I'm not going to do it. It's just I'm just walking around feeling physically sick the whole time.
Yeah,
right.
It is horrible. Totally.
It is disgusting. They are barbarians of the worst order. So this chap and I met. Well, weirdly enough, we have so many connections in common, and I didn't get to know him properly until we were both on what they call the crew, which is the managing committee, if you will, of what was called Variety Club back in the happy days, and then was changed to Variety, the children's charity, which does what it says on the tin. And I worked beside this fellow. I don't know, I suppose we knew each other about 20 years, and then I left the organization because politics drove me nuts. But he's a terrific man. If you love The Darling Buds of May, if you love Catherine Zeta-Jones, if you like good books, and if you like one of the finest raconteurs in the UK, and we need for our mental health cheering up, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Pip Burley.
Hi.
Hey, Pip.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Nice to see you both. Yeah, fine, thank you.
How lovely to see you. It's been far too long.
It has been a long time. Yeah, it has been a long time. And we had some good times. Variety Club in those days was active. It was all volunteers, all working very hard. And we achieved quite a lot. But more lately, it became what I would call professionalized. I'm never sure really how well that works in the charity
If somebody
world.
get the phone, whichever that is.
Is that? I don't think that's me.
It's not me because my phones are off. He's a very important man, is Pip Burley.
It's my alarm telling me that I should be on the radio.
Is that to tell you?
I've got one that sounds exactly the same.
Ah,
and
you
I haven't
recognise
set it, and I'm like, okay, that's weird.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
Not a problem. Proves
yeah.
your life.
So we were just
Pip,
talking about
no,
charities
we are, but
becoming
let's kick off.
professionalised.
We'll be kind of. I'd like to because for those of you who don't know, Pip was a huge mover and shaker in the world of charity. I have a view, which I'm just going to put out there. Longie, jump in. It's that I will only give to charities where I know where my money's going to go. And what I don't want to do is to pay for wonderful offices and huge staff and enormous salaries. We're talking 100, 120, 130,000 a year for CEOs and all the rest of that. I don't want to be paying that. I want to pay for whatever the charity was set up. Where do you stand on that, Pip? Because it's something that affects all of us.
Yeah, well, it does, and I think it's a very practical point too, because who are you likely to give money to? I mean, if I go along and I say to somebody, I've got a really good cause, I have at the moment. I'll tell you what it is. It's still part of Variety.
Okay.
I think they'll listen more to me because they know that I'm doing it out of the kindness of my heart. I'm genuinely charitable, and I want them to be as well. If a young, professional guy, doing his best, working hard, probably may well be very conscientious, but they know that he's a professional. They know that he's earning out of it. I just think they're very less inclined to give. Charitable people work best when they're approached by other charitable people. Not in my mind when they're. Now, I'll give you an example of this. You will remember us in the days when we were around Main Variety, as we now call it. They had a golfing society, which
the golfing society.
I joined the golf society before I joined Variety, and the previous chairman, a magnificent guy called Tom Hilliard, very, very sadly died about 6 years ago. I was the oldest guy on the committee, so they asked me if I'd take over the chairmanship of it. And very fortunately, and incidentally, very willingly, from Main Variety's point of view, I approached them and I said, I think we'll do much better if we separate from you and we run it as a little golfing society with just a minimal number of staff, and with the freedom to do things we want and to enact things quickly, which is very, very difficult within the structure of a big charity. And that's not entirely the big charity's fault, because they in turn are largely hampered by the Charities Commission and charity law, which imposes a whole load of what I would call restrictive practices upon them. So there's an irony there. Anyway, long story short, we did break away, and Variety Club were happy for us to do that. We still give the money we raise to them for Sunshine Coaches. Last year and the year before, which were largely affected by COVID, especially the year before, we kept going. Last year, we gave away 40 Sunshine Coaches.
Wow.
Which is equivalent to about £2.5 million. 40 coaches. Main Variety in the same period gave away 5.
I'm going to jump in, because some people watching may know the name Sunshine Coaches.
Yeah.
Obviously, I do, because I was with you for 20 years or so. But explain what they do and why they're so good for a lot of people's mental health and well-being. Explain the purpose.
They are. And the reason they're good is because there are a whole load of institutions, schools, and so on in this country looking after disabled, disadvantaged kids. And many of these children in wheelchairs, they have learning difficulties. Well, you know what I'm talking about. What the Sunshine Coach does is it enables those kids to get out and do all the things that we would take for granted. They go to the seaside, they can go to the cinema, they can go just on runs around the countryside, which many of them may never have seen. It's very hard to imagine a child who has probably got to the age of 8 or 10, 12 maybe, and never actually been to the seaside. Well, the Sunshine Coach enables them to do all this, and most people have seen them around, but they don't necessarily know where they come from. And where they come from is Variety, as we used to call it, Variety Club. And more recently, we gave away 40 of them last year. Main Variety gave away 5. Now, the interesting thing about that comparison is that we have one full-time member of staff and one part-time member of staff. No offices, no overheads other than that. So we are giving away over 95% of the money we raise goes to the Sunshine Coach.
Yeah.
And that is because it's a voluntary organization. The people who are doing the work and raising money are volunteers. The guy who runs it, who's brilliant, a fellow called Jamie Little, ex-European Tour golfer, took to the task like a duck in water. I mean, extraordinary what he's done. He's conscientious, he's keen, he organizes 21 events a year, and he's really excellent. But he works really hard. His heart is in it. But
you see, there it is, from well-being point of view. I always have believed, and I know I'm not putting words in Neil's mouth, but I'm sure he would agree, that if you do something with a good heart and with enthusiasm, you get much better results. It's not like, oh, it's a job. It's a passion.
Absolutely right.
It's a passion.
And that applies really, and in a perfect world would apply to everything you do. When I made the Darling Buds of May, first big series I made for television, I was passionate about it. I wrote the music for it. Interesting little story. We went out to a number of composers, and they submitted their ideas, and it was all very bucolic and very agricultural, very rural, as you'd expect it to be, with the Larkins. And we were reviewing this stuff, and it was perfectly professional and good stuff. But I thought they missed the point, because the Darling Buds of May, which of course I'd been up to here with, for the best part of a year, is actually about romance. It's a romance. It's nothing to do with junkyards and tips and making money and being a dealer and a weird. It's actually a romance. It's a romance between Pop and Ma, and of course subsequently with Mariette and Charlie. So I wrote a theme tune, and I submitted it anonymously, because you know what the industry's like. For us,
you did a Ronnie Barker. You did a Ronnie Barker as George Wiley then.
I did, exactly right. And Yorkshire Television, who we're working with, came back and said, well, that's right, that's the theme tune we want. So again, that came from here, you see. That's the beauty of it. Yeah,
it's interesting. Pip, you wouldn't know this, but Neil and I had, I'm sure you remember, Longie, the guy who does all the music, because he'd had some problems with himself, for come on, Morse. He did a lot of stuff, but he did the new. Do you remember him, Neil?
Yes, I do. Very well. I'm trying to remember his name. A very well-known composer.
Charming.
Yeah.
What a nice guy. And he'd done a lot of other stuff. And I was, Longie and I were fascinated. I think, where do you start? How do you even think about? I can't write music. I can write, but I can't write music. How do you start with something which has to convey
I picked up on that when you said
the feeling of the show?
I thought, my God, what a multi-talented guy. I mean, you did the whole show and wrote the music. But it ties into what you were saying about your passion for it. And you're right. In an ideal world, we would approach everything with that enthusiasm and compassion.
Yeah. And that, of course, No, I was going to say, if you're passionate about something, generally speaking, you'll do it well. Yeah. And doing it well, of course, is everything.
I remember a certain story. It's everything. It is everything. I remember a certain story which I've thought about ever since you told me, God knows how many years ago, that you're in Wales, you're auditioning, and you come down to reception, and someone who was there for a completely different reason thought they were there to see you, and the rest, as they say, is history. If you don't believe in fate, listening and watching all over the world, and hi to Asa Don Brown over in America. Hi there. Listen to this story from Pip Burnley.
Yeah, well, it wasn't in Wales. It was actually at Yorkshire Television, which more confusingly was in London.
I thought it was down in Cardiff.
No, Catherine comes from Wales, of course, but no, this was in London. And we got to the end of the auditioning process. And at that time, what we were turning out, what Rada were turning out, because, of course, Mariette was a young person. She was 18, in the books. What Rada was turning out was a stream of sort of rather interesting looking actresses. And Mariette, the way it was described by H.E. Bates in the books, was a sort of voluptuous, gorgeous girl next door, who everybody loved, everybody fancied, who was rather generous, with her resources, shall we say. She
with her favours. With her
favours, better word. She says to Ma in one of the books, she says, if a nice guy comes along and you like him and wants to do something, she said, it seems a shame to say no. So this was quite a complicated character to cast, but she had to be adorable, and we just weren't getting there. And we met at their offices in just off Bloomsbury Place, and we saw the last two girls, four of us, middle-aged guys, and I'd sat down in reception about half an hour before the meeting, and this beautiful brunette had come in and sat down just a few seats away from me and gave me a huge smile, And I kind of put that out of my mind. And we concluded that these two really, we'd have to just pick the best of them. But it was an unhappy decision to make. So I said, what about, hang about, there's another girl. And the casting director looked at his list and said, no, these are the only two we're seeing. I said, no, there's a lovely girl. She was down in reception. So he got on to reception and said, is this girl, who receptionist recognised, of course, is she still in the building? And she was. And she came in and she came through the door and smiled, and our jaws dropped. And I think we probably asked her a few, in retrospect, rather inane questions, which she answered.
Can you spell the word Pip?
Pip. And eventually we said, well, thank you very much. And she left and gave us another dazzling smile and closed the door behind her. And one of the guys said, I think we found our Mariette.
Mm.
And the other one, Bernard Lawrence, said, but can she act? And all four of us in unison said, it doesn't matter. And that's how she got the part. And
turned out she could, though.
Well, eventually, yeah.
Great. She's a great
she was fantastic, yeah. And
do you know,
and
Pip,
she was a lovely, she's a lovely girl.
I've never said this before. At the height of her fame, when the world had gone Catherine Zeta-Jones mad, I wandered in to Soho House to have a drink. Surprise. It was midday or something. And I was on my own. And they had, I don't know if they've still got it, a circular bar. I'm sitting on my own. I was actually having a coffee, to be perfectly honest with you. And in came the most beautiful person I'd ever seen in my life. And you've known me for many years, longest known me, even longer. I can go and talk to most people. I was so dumbstruck by this person's who was on her own, and there was no one else in the room. I couldn't even say hello. I actually couldn't even bring myself to go, hello, nothing. I sat there like an idiot. Extraordinarily magnetic, unbelievable.
I took her out to dinner once at the Inn on the Park. We were discussing actually another series for her, which was a whole different story. It never happened. Should have done. And I was sitting in the restaurant in the Inn on the Park, which is quite low lighting, waiting for her. And I always, if I was entertaining anybody, you know, who qualified as a celebrity, I always tried to find a table in a corner so they could choose either to face the other guests or have their back to the other guest. So I was sitting in the corner waiting for her. She was fashionably late, 5 or 10 minutes late. And she appeared in the doorway of the restaurant in a kind of silhouette in this black dress. And you could hear the clatter of knives and forks as the other diners put them down on their plates. I'll never forget it. And then, of course, she looked around for a few moments, spotted me in the corner and made her way over to me. And I was imagining all those other guests thinking, who's this old sod who's dining with that gorgeous? Must be her father.
What a great moment. High five, brother, for that one.
Good one,
that is just...
Very much so.
Well, we're not that impressed. When Neil and I go to, KFC or, Nando's, it's very much the same.
Yeah.
Very much the same. I'm waiting for Neil. I sit in the corner, make sure, because he gets mobbed, especially around, Southeast London. So, here's a question coming in from one of our viewers, the excellent Graham Pack. Is it more, well, I can answer the question to this, but I'm not going to. Is it more difficult to write the music for a show that has to set the mood, like with you, with Darling Buds and May, with our guest the other week for Morse and other things, or to write a pop song with pop songs? Easy as pie.
Well, that's a very good,
what do you think,
It's a very good question. Yeah, Graham. I mean, no composing is easy, and no writing songs. Writing a song is an extremely difficult job, especially if you're trying to write the words and the music, which, generally speaking, is how it's done nowadays. It didn't used to be. People like Irving Berlin and the great composer Cole Porter, wonderful songwriters, they wrote the words and the music. It was quite rare in those days, but now nearly everybody does. I think writing film music is, I would say, probably easier than writing a pop song, especially rock and roll.
Easier? Do you think it's easier?
Do.
Wow.
Well, for
Okay.
two reasons.
Right.
Yeah, for two reasons. One, the audience's attention is not focused on the music. So the music is not the predominant thing. If you're listening to a pop record, it is. That's all you've got. You're listening to the song. Whereas film music and TV music is setting an atmosphere or trying to lay down a context against which the scene is being played out. And there's many, many ways of doing that. You can write against what the scene is doing. You can have a fight, for example, where the purpose of the fight is more important than the fight itself. So let's just, for example, say that two men are fighting over the love for a woman. You may not necessarily want to put fight music behind that. You might actually put quite sad, romantic music behind it, which of course will give the whole scene a completely different tone. These are the tricks and the trades of writing film music, but it's never at the forefront of the viewer, it shouldn't be at the forefront. It should be like the clothes of a well-dressed man, unnoticeable. You should just think that's great. Writing a music for a pop song is very, very much harder. You're trying to tune into all kinds of prevailing trends, themes, what rhythms the public are buying, what other records are doing well. You've got to come up with an original idea for a pop song. Original ideas for songs is pretty hard anyway. David Hamilton, a famous disc jockey, once said to me, he said, Pip, before rock and roll came along, we had love songs. After rock and roll, we had sex songs. Very, very sound observation, because
Longie, you do DJ sets, and I never have. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I knew David Hamilton many years ago. He was at Capital Gold, and yeah. Sorry, I can't really offer more input than that very much. Yeah. So I noticed that songs go through kind of corporate trends, if you like you say, they're looking for the current thing, and I think that can kill originality a bit. I've been moaning for years that there was no. I would say as a DJ, where's the new Bohemian Rhapsody? Where's the new Stairway to Heaven? Where's the things that 30 years on they're still going to be iconic? And luckily, there's been a whole glut of really good new music, either from existing bands like Duran Duran, for example, or brand new acts like, I don't know, Olivia Rodrigo. But there seems to be a wonderful new influx coming in. But before that, they kind of follow the corporate sound. I could give several examples, but we're not really talking about that. But
it's always months late. Really nice. It's always months late behind the curve, isn't it? It's always. That's how it's always late.
Yeah. The interesting thing, though, about what Hamilton said was that love, of course, which was the subject of all those wonderful songs that we all grew up with, basically all written during the first half of the last century, right up until the 60s, really. That's what a popular song was. But love, you see, multifaceted. You've got everything in there. You've got jealousy, you've got hate, you've got ecstasy, you've got misery, you've got sadness, jealousy, envy, you name it. It's all there in love. Yeah. Sex songs, well, let's just say sex is a rather more single-minded pursuit. Would you agree?
Not really. I'd say hatred.
I can't remember, Pip, to be honest.
I'd say it's all in there.
But no, the point is the composer and the lyricists have got a vast canvas, if you're writing about love, but a very much more restricted canvas if you're writing about sex. But it's coming back. I think romance is coming back a bit with singers like Adele and others. They're basically singing ballads. And I think that's a good thing, really.
I don't think I can do the Mick Jagger quote, which he gave many years ago. He said, rock and roll, it's all about blanking, but you can fill in the blanks yourself all over the world. I want to widen the conversation slightly, then we're going to come on to your new book. But we don't live in a, where's the new Haggard?
Graham, do you know nothing? Have you not heard of the Cha-Cha slide?
No. We don't live in a very kind world. We live in a brutal world and often a barbaric world. And you've been in media all your life. And I wonder whether the taste or the desire, is it on behalf of the program makers, or you've seen the reaction? Look at this. I'm just going to put this up as a sort of intro to my question and the next part. Paul Claridge, he says, Darling Buds of May was such an amazing feel-good show. It was televisual magic. It was also appointment viewing back in the days. Now, I know, I don't want to get into the argument. Yes, you got 500 channels to choose from. Obviously, your audience base is going to be divided up much more. You're never going to get the Morecambe and Wise 28 million people appointment viewed. I understand that. But Pip, as a writer, as a producer, do you think the people want and hanker for something which is, to quote Paul Claridge, feel good and not brutal?
I think every so often they do, yes. And I think particularly in brutal times. It was often said, the Darling Buds of May did really well because, we had the Suez Crisis, we had other bits and pieces going on, at that particular time. I don't know. I mean, a balance, I love good thrillers. I don't mind violence on the screen. I'd far rather my kids played out any violent fantasies, by watching television or films or reading books than by actually going out and doing it.
Yeah, quite.
There's another school of thought, of course, which says that precisely the opposite is what happens. The more violence, the more you normalize it on television, the more young people are going to be influenced by it and believe that it's part of everyday life. I don't know whether anyone has the answers to any of this. I would have thought that in terms of television, if I was running the BBC or ITV these days, I would try, because I'm a scheduler. It's interesting when you compare it with streaming, where of course the same argument doesn't apply. But as a scheduler of a broadcast company, I would try to create balance. And I'm not sure that they achieve that. Certainly with drama, comedy drama, which is really what the Darling Buds of May was. That's its designation. It's particularly tricky, because it's not sitcom and it's not drama. And I've certainly found during my years in television that the commissioners were very suspicious of comedy drama. They couldn't place it. It was either drama, in which case it should be exciting and, full of threats and jeopardy, or it should be comedy, in which case you have a studio audience laughing their butts off, every minute. So where does comedy drama sit? Well, it sits in an area which I believe is mainly distinguished by its charm. People were charmed by Darling Buds of May. Charm is a difficult word to define these days. It's almost gone out of fashion, really, isn't it?
We live in a charmless world. I genuinely don't find the world charming. I tell you the nearest to it, and this sounds weird, I suppose, is Strictly Come Dancing.
Yes, great charm.
I don't know anything about dancing. What feeling do you get? It looks lovely. It looks spectacular. Yeah. The production values are fantastic. It's very colourful. It's very bright. It's very cheery. It's very upbeat. I don't care who wins or loses. It's absolutely irrelevant to me. I don't know, apart from Les Dennis, I don't know the people. So, but I think that's the nearest we've got. Instead of having something which is, God, I mean, this makes me sound 102, which I nearly am, but the word gentle. Darling Buds of May, for example, was gentle. Its humor was gentle. The storylines were gentle. You've used the key words, jeopardy, threat. They were, what was the worst threat? The tax inspector was coming around, and you knew that Catherine Zeta-Jones would, charm him, etc. We don't live in a gentle world. No. And I think it's a shame. Yeah, there we go.
Well, there
Neil,
we are.
Could you read this, Neil? Would you be so kind?
As a clinical psychologist, says Asa Don Brown, I can attest that researchers indicated that violent programming, games, music, etc., has a profound effect upon the minds of its viewers and listeners. Yeah. Interesting.
You see, Asa, I would love to get you on because you wouldn't know, Pip. Asa's very high up in the psychotherapeutic community in America. He lives in New York State. And he's a regular one of our viewers. Yeah, go on, Neil.
I'd like to ask a question, if I may, just while we got this up from Asa. Asa, do you think, I watched plenty of violent things growing up, and yet I'm completely non-violent. So does it have an effect on all. I can understand that some do. I mean, God, people get radicalized on YouTube, for God's sake. But
Yes, they do.
all, and that's what I'm questioning. Because I always used to think it was just, people trying to spoil my fun. I want to watch what I want. You know what I mean?
Just, you see, I'm with Neil on this, and I don't know about you, Pip, but when I grew up, I had loads of guns. I played with guns all the time, rifles, revolvers, pistols, whatever. You know, my favorite toy of all time is called Johnny 7. It was a massive gun, right? I've never gone out and bought a gun. I don't carry a gun. I've never gone and shot anybody. So it's fine. The twins, my boys are 25 now, and they grew up on, Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption. These are violent. They are the most peace-loving young men you could wish to find. It hasn't turned their heads. I'm not sure. I can't argue with Asa because he's a professional, and I'm not.
No, I can believe it does. I'm just questioning: is it all?
Is it everybody? Well, it's the same as pornography, isn't it? The great argument is that and like drugs, the first hit you get is very exciting, and then you need more and more and more, and to make it more extreme, to relive that initial emotion.
Yes, and you'll never reclaim the first hit. That's what anyone that's taken drugs will tell you, because the brain starts to shut neuroreceptors down. It's called downregulation because it can't take the onslaught. So there's less neuroreceptors the next time. So you need more to get the same effect. But I don't want to divert from the conversation.
But in the end, that process usually leads
Kimmy makes a great point.
Doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
One way or another. And I think the argument would be that, not disagreeing with Asa, but the argument would be that it's better to live out all that stuff through fiction and through films and through television than live it out in real life. So,
I agree. I like my drama to be on the screen. Let's put it that way.
Precise, but
I don't want to watch sunshine and rainbows and unicorns all the time.
Yeah.
You need the word's gone out of my head.
No, you see, there's
you need the good guys and the bad guys, to make something interesting. But I prefer that on screen.
Pip, let me ask you this, because I think it's another excellent question. There are fewer gentle types of shows, full action cop shows, celebrity reality. You understand, all reality shows are created by a younger version of Pip. They're all produced and they're scripted, and I don't mean and I could talk about that for ages. Let's not bother because it's ghastly. Here's the key question. Would the likes of Last of the Summer Wine be commissioned now? What a great question.
Yeah, well, of course, the key to the question is the likes of. What would be the modern equivalent, the contemporary equivalent of Last of the Summer Wine? Last of the Summer Wine was a period piece, but it was set at the time that it was shown. In other words, it was in real time. Darling Buttermay wasn't. Darling Buttermay was transmitted in the 80s and 90s, but set in the 50s. So you do have the opportunity to place a television program within the context of a period. And Happy Days, what generations regard Happy Days dependent upon their generation. To me, I grew up in the 50s. It was a happy period. I suspect most of the audience of Darling Buttermay were also regard the 50s as a happy period. But things have moved on now. So to answer the question, it's absolutely no reason why the television companies shouldn't be producing programs like Last of the Summer Wine, which indeed was a comedy drama. Can't remember whether it had laughter tracks or not. It may have done. Something we resisted on the Darling Buttermay.
I think it did.
I've got a feeling it might have done. And a laughter track, you see, again, is a lack of confidence on the part of the people behind the show. You should never put laughter tracks on, because if it's funny, it's funny, and people should laugh. They shouldn't need to be prompted by some kind of recorded.
Well, don't they need to be told, hey, this is a funny bit?
Yeah,
it's funny now, because other people are that they're not laughing. It's just
no, they're not. God, and sitcom audiences, in studios are, as you know, led by guys off the side who are putting up boards they laugh. The studio is whipped up into what they. But a comedy drama shouldn't do that. comedy drama is a broader sense of humour. Graham, I can only come back to what I said just now. It's difficult to commission. The people commissioning television programs know what works, they think, and know what doesn't work. And comedy drama is a dodgy area. Even great writers. I mean, John Sullivan, who wrote Fools and Horses, who was a good friend of mine. Bless him. Sadly.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I would have given anything to have met him and just shook his hand.
He was a great man, very quiet, very not at all egocentric, but a genius at what he did.
Totally, yeah.
But he, went away from sitcom at one point and wrote some comedy drama based around a Dickensian character, Micawber, and it didn't work. And he talked to me about it. He said, "I don't know why it doesn't work." And I said, "No, nor do I, John. But something about it wasn't right." And comedy drama is difficult. It is difficult to get right.
Were you able, Pip? Were you able? I mean, you've got huge experience. John Sullivan was a comedy writing god. I mean, just absolutely. Anyone who could create Only Fools and Horses and make it so brilliant for so long. Were you able to sit down with your pal and dissect why it didn't work?
No. And I don't think I would have wanted to, frankly.
I find that so intellectually, I find that so interesting.
Yeah.
You're both so damn experienced.
Yeah.
You could look at something, and I've known you a long time, and say, "Well, that's going to work, Russell. That's crap. Let's get rid of it. Let's change it. Let's do something." Well, no, you'd be honest, and I would want that.
Yeah.
There's no point.
Yeah.
People live in a fool's paradise. But when you've got two people who really know what the hell they're doing, and they go, "Well, not working," but we don't know why.
Well, John, again, towards the end of his life, John was still coming up with great ideas for sitcoms. I mean, Only Fools and Horses wasn't the last thing he wrote. And he was getting very depressed. And it was absolutely in the front of his mind. It was distressing him that he was dealing with, 25-year-old script executives at the BBC who were criticizing his scripts and making what they thought was constructive improvements for, and he turned to these people. He'd say, "Look, I've been doing this all my life. I really do know how to write sitcom." And that kind of hassle, was dispiriting him and demotivating him. Yes, it is awful. And he used to tell me things, he said, that out of 20,000 people that the BBC employ, only 1,000 of them work in program making. He was full of stuff like that.
Yes, what do the rest do? What do they do?
What are they doing?
Interestingly, and I've said this to Neil and I've talked about, I had the opportunity to meet, well, he's gone now, but Vince Powell, who was another hugely successful scriptwriter for television, huge hit after hit after hit. And he had the same. I said, I'd love to meet him. And someone said, "We can have lunch." And the two of us sat down and had lunch. And I asked him all the questions I've ever wanted to ask a man of that caliber, because I was just in awe of that skill. And he said, we went to a meeting. It was ITV or BBC, whatever it was. And they said, the new head of comedy, what it is. And he said, "I'll pop up and see him. I'm in the building." They said, "Oh, no, you can't do that, Mr. Powell. You've got to get an appointment." He said, "It's ridiculous." Anyway. He gets the meeting, and the guy sits there, and it starts off with, "So, Vince Powell, could you tell me a bit about yourself, what you've done?" And Vince Powell stood up and he said, "If you haven't had even the courtesy to know what I've done for this company," he said, "look it up. I'll come back another time." He never worked with them again. I understand being depressed and dispirited. It would be horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. And I think from a point of well-being and mental health, there's a big lesson to be learnt here. It's not just you. I don't mean it's not you, Neil. It's not you, Pip, or it's just me. People watching and listening all over the world to the show. It's not just you.
No.
And
I tell you who said that very, very recently, Russ, exactly the same thing. We went to see Joan Collins, who is promoting a book, and she was doing a one-lady show at the Rose Theatre in Kingston. We went last night.
In Kingston?
I've been
Rose Theatre, Kingston.
Yeah, Kingston.
I know it well. It's just down the road from me. Lovely theatre.
Well, you should have gone to see Joan Collins last night.
Should have done.
Yeah. Now, the thing, why did I go? It's very difficult not to like Joan Collins. I think she has great charm, the quality we were talking about earlier. But she has immense survivability, if that's a word. I mean, how on earth, at the age of 90 or whatever she is now, why is she going out doing a one-woman show? It was a nice show. Her husband, Percy, was the other half of it. He kind of compared it, asked her questions, and beautifully set, properly done. And, of course, you get the members in the audience when it comes to the questions and answers saying, hey, hi, Joan, my daughter wants to get into film and television, what would your advice be? I thought she might say don't, which is often the advice that I give.
She was a barge pole.
What she said, exactly. She didn't say that. She said, well, various steps, you've got to get a training, you've got to, go to RADA or something like that. You've got to find an agent. She said, and after that, lovely, it's up to you. But she said, the road is full of despair, of sadness, of misery, of a sense of rejection. And she said, the thing that got me through it was knowing that it wasn't just me.
Wow.
Exactly what you just said, Russ.
Yeah.
When you say not just me, do you mean in a sense that there's other players and you don't have full control over the outcome?
No.
Or you're not the only one experiencing that. There's many others.
You're not the only one experiencing it. Yeah. You have to somehow accept, rather like a salesman, if he makes 10 phone calls and he only gets one sale, it's worth going through the 9 failures because that one sale, will pay him 20,000 quid commission. It's a frame of mind. And that's what she was saying. She said to survive this, you have to have that frame of mind. She said, people only ever talk to me about my successes. They're the only things that have gone down in history. Nobody ever asks me about all the parts I didn't get in between, all the projects that I proposed that never got made, all the
Cleopatra for a start.
Well, she went through that in some detail, how Elizabeth Taylor got that part off.
Yeah.
But I must just say, I'm not here to publicise Joan's show, but she'll be moved on by now. But she looked absolutely fabulous. She was on the ball, sharp as anything, very funny, great sense of humour. And you think to yourself, well, if she's come out the other end of this factory that we call show business, that is pretty rare. And she did it.
I add to that story, Pip. I add to that with I called in years ago to do some voice demos for a new show. And there was characters, and they wanted various characters. So I was called in to the soundstage of the Carry On film. So I was so excited. I went literally touching the walls. I felt I was in the presence of greatness because I love the Carry On film. So, and it was a series created by the lady who had created, amongst other things, Teletubbies. Anne, help me out. Is it Reed? Anne, gone out of my head. Her first name's Anne, and she made the BBC tens, if not hundreds of millions of pounds from Teletubbies, which was sold worldwide, plus the merchandising rights. Everybody knows Teletubbies was a huge phenomenon, huge, that ran and ran and ran for years globally. So in my naivety, and I say this to encourage other people, not just for the sake of an anecdote, I said, oh, well, this will be pretty, I bet they'd be pleased to see you and, welcoming you with this new series. He said, they're treating me like they've never met me before. And I thought, this is the person who created Teletubbies. So if you're watching and listening to the show and you're thinking, I'm a failure, it's no good, it's not me. These are people with huge careers and they're treated like trash. So it isn't you. It's how life rolls, and it's not nice, but it's how it is. That's the lesson.
Can't add much to that.
That's the lesson. Tell us about your new book while you're here.
Well, that's kind of you. Yeah, it's something I always wanted to do. I've written 3 or 4 other books, but this is the first attempt I've had at fiction. It's taken me ages to do it. Anybody who thinks that writing music's difficult, which it is, and would, there you are. You know, writing a novel is a serious proposition.
I know, I'm in the middle of it. It's murderous.
It's horrific. But yeah, there were a few issues in it I was interested in. And one of them, in fact, was mental health. And the kind of mental health I'm talking about is what's called dissociated identity disorder, which is where people have multiple personalities and they impinge upon their lives, and they become different people on different days. They can't remember what one of their personalities has done, and so on and so forth. And I don't know why I was interested in this, because it used to be diagnosed as, you know, hysteria or depression or all kinds of other things. It's only relatively recently that it's been accepted as a mental condition, and they estimate, you know, 2 to 3% of the population suffer from it in some way or another.
Is it a response to trauma?
It causes trauma, but it's not just
not a response to it. No.
Sorry.
Not a response to trauma. No.
Well, yes, it is very much so. Nearly always triggered by some awful event in someone's very young life. More women than men get diagnosed, but interestingly, the reason they give for that is because men who have this end up in prison. Women do, for some reason, end up, you know, with a psychiatrist or
no, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense. That's a gender difference. Men tend to act out, women tend to turn inwards.
Exactly so. So there's a very large element of this running through the book. It also deals with some other issues, organ trafficking, for example, which is a worldwide industry, largely ignored, overlooked by governments for very good reasons. On the one hand, you know, you've got the moral argument, of course, that you shouldn't take organs, or you should know where these organs come from. They should be freely donated or whatever. But on the other hand, you know, if you've got a child who's dying because of kidney disease, and you can obtain a kidney without asking too many questions, happens all the time, happens in the best hospitals in the world. Very few surgeons or parents are going to sit back and say, well, I'm sorry, we can't operate on this child because this organ has come from an illegal source. So there's a very tricky and rather interesting sort of moral dilemma there.
That is tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ooh,
so that's interesting.
Wow.
So that's in there as well, but it's all set against the backdrop of a kidnapping, and an 8-year-old girl is kidnapped from a very wealthy family, and our hero gets involved, and it leads him along a path which very nearly destroys him and his life. But there's a little bit of hope at the end as well. So it's a racy, hopefully fast-moving thriller. But 1 or 2 of the reviews have been kind enough to say they found it educational as well. So,
what's it called? What's the name of the book?
It's called Villa Harmony, which is
Villa Harmony.
Villa Harmony. The little girl who's kidnapped is called Harmony.
Ah,
yeah,
right.
Her parents.
And where can people find it, Pip?
You can get it at Waterstones. You can get it on Amazon as usual, which is where most people get their books nowadays.
Fantastic! You got it into Waterstones. Bravo.
Yeah. So,
wow.
So it's very early days, but so
if
far
you know
the reviews
nothing
have been
about
encouraging.
publishing and novels, etc., to get your book into Waterstones is like the holy grail.
Well,
you have no idea how hard that is. Neil, I've got to make you laugh because I always tell everybody how dumb I am. And many years ago, by pure chance, Pip and I happened to be, we weren't together, but we hooked up for dinner in, we were in Spain, south of Spain, years and years ago, sitting having dinner. he said, well, tell me a bit more about yourself. And there's that. I said, well, I started off when I got back from America, and I started off in this below the line agency, and it was called CBT. And there was a pause, and Pip stared at me across the table. He went, what was it called again? I said, oh, CBT. It was short for Cowing, Burley and Trendle. He says, well, I was the Burley. And
Quite right.
No idea.
Yeah.
I had absolutely no idea at all. This was the very early 80s.
Yeah.
Weird.
No, we must have just
Pip
about
just left. Pip,
I just
Pip
left, and you joined. Yeah, strange.
It was so weird.
Mm.
In weird as heck. Right, got time for some quick questions here. These are really good questions. And this is again from Graham. John Cleese is writing an updated version. Could you read it, Neil? My throat's
John Cleese is writing an updated version of Fawlty Towers with his daughter. Should he just leave it alone, as it might diminish standing of the original brilliant show?
Yeah, interesting. Good question. What do you think?
I would say yes, he should leave it alone. I think the original Fawlty Towers, which were written by him and Connie Booth, who he was married to at the time, were absolute genius. They only produced, to my recollection, 13 episodes, I think. So
12.
It was a very
I think there were 12.
series.
I think there were 12 episodes.
12 or 13
in total.
Absolute legendary gems of television. I wouldn't go back there, but I don't know the truth of it. The story is. Pardon?
Do you think you could be pleasantly surprised?
Yeah.
No,
but I doubt it.
I don't.
No,
our expectations are so great. Our expectations would be so huge that anything that doesn't come up to the level of genius that Fawlty Towers was all those years ago, you're going, well, that's no good, because it won't be the same.
Of course, we don't know whether he intends to cast himself at the moment. I'm not sure whether he's going to try and replay Basil Fawlty. That again, I don't know. I mean, publicly, he said, hasn't he, that he needs the money. He needs to keep working because his divorce was so hugely expensive. He's got to keep going. It's a shame that he has to, but can't blame him for trying. I mean,
no.
That's what we were talking
Paul
about.
Claridge. I won't put the whole Paul Claridge's thing. He said they were going to rewrite. What was it called? Wolfie Smith, Citizen Smith, right? Which I like.
John Sullivan.
All those years ago. And the cast got together. We're going to call it Senior Citizen Smith. Quite clever. They wrote the pilot. Never got the green light. John Sullivan's family wouldn't give permission as holders of the estate. Again, it's never going to be as good as the original, is it?
No,
or
exactly.
is it? I don't think so.
Well, we haven't even referred to the more recent series of the Darling Buds and May, which was called The Larkins. I mean, we could start a whole new program about that, but nothing we could do about it. Our rights in the Larkins had evaporated some years previously, so there was nothing to stop someone doing it. But from what I can tell, many of the qualities that we were describing the original series had, were, in my view, sadly lacking in the new one. But it's like anything else. Whatever you do, you've got to do it well.
But that's a bit of a sort of golden handcuffs deal, isn't it? Because they've got the main actor, Bradley Walsh, who is terrific, a terrific human being, a charming guy, and very talented. And it's like, right, we've got him on The Chase, we've got him on this show. I know. Let's get a sitcom going with him. That'll work. So there is a bit of that sort of thinking, isn't it? It's the financial, contractual thinking that takes it all out.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Pip, it's been a joy to see you. It's been far, far too many years. You look ridiculously well. I find out your exploits from Vicky, of all people, who I've never met, but we're Facebook friends. So for some reason or other, we see. Anyway, there we are. What is this? Great. It says, didn't realize that Pip was the chair of the Quest Trust. What is that something? I don't know what that is. What is that?
It was an academy in New Addington, which was one of the very first academies, when academies came in rather than grammar schools went out and academies came in. And I took it over as chair at a time when it really needed demolishing, rebuilding, restating, rebranding. So I did all that over a 5-year period. We put up a £16 million building, yeah, it was a project. I was very happy. The headmaster who we appointed is still there, believe it or not, after many years, and it's a very successful school in a very poor part of Croydon, with some fairly challenged pupils. But yeah, I look back on that and think, yeah, job well done. Yeah,
absolutely. So, well, you're a great man. That's all I have to say. But
No,
you know
I'm not.
that anyway.
Lovely to meet you, Pip.
No,
All the best with
you
everything,
are.
and congratulations on the book.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much, Longie. Nice
I
to
hope
meet
it
you.
does. I hope it does really, really well. Thank you for
Kind
finding
of you.
time to join us. You're a busy fellow. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
What
What a nice
He's
guest.
such a great man. He's such a great guy. Such a great guy. So a lot of topics covered there, but one of the things, and I talk about this with Neil a lot, really is, and I tell you what prompted me to say that. There was a tweet yesterday from a would-be author, and I didn't know her. It's just a tweet. It's a complete stranger to me, saying, I'm in fear of finishing my book. I'm in fear of publishing it. I'm fearful of what the people will say. I'm fearful of being rejected. And I wrote back to a stranger and I said, no, go ahead and do it. Go and do it. Tell your fears to go away. You've got to. You've got this far. It's not just you. It's everybody. Everybody
It
feels
really
it.
is.
And
In whatever
really is.
capacity in life as well. I think we're a lot more similar and perhaps connected than we might give ourselves credit for. And there's a kind of not just you element in everything that anyone could experience. And I think perhaps in knowing that at the very least you're not the only one, as long as that doesn't lead to a massive worldwide pity party. But you know what I mean.
But you don't need a pity. You don't need a pity party. It's really a reality, because I think the way people think and what really beats them up mentally is I'm no good, I'm rubbish. Look at these people who are hugely successful. And it's essential to remember.
But if Joan Collins said it's a road fraught with
Joan Collins, no one remembers
things.
the shocking, crappy films that she made, or the time she didn't get the roles that she absolutely desired. The books that have been rejected. Never forget that J.K. Rowling, one of the most successful authors of all time, ever, her book was rejected, I think, by 18 different publishers.
Yeah, boy wizard. Now that
And
never worked.
when the publisher eventually said, "Oh, we'll give it a go," never run away with the fact that they were geniuses. They only printed 500 books.
Wow.
500 books. Because they didn't understand what they really had. They took a punt. So never feel deflated, or it's like, all these people that we I'm going to say look up to, which is a horrible shorthand, but you know what I mean. They have all their trials and tribulations, and everybody has to keep reinventing themselves all the time. All the time. If you are going to the vigil from 5 o'clock today in Whitehall, please be safe. Please be aware of your surroundings. Please take care. Don't take any weapons. I know you won't. Don't do anything dumb. Don't be provocative, because I'm sure there will be enough ghastly people there trying to provoke you into action. Don't rise to the bait. You are better than that. It's a horrible situation. It's a ghastly situation. The biggest loss of life of one group since the Holocaust in one day. Bear that in mind.
Is that right?
Bear that in mind. The biggest loss of life.
What makes me so sad in situations like this, and it was the same with Ukraine, it's just ordinary people just living their lives. As ordinary as you and me. People growing
just
up.
people.
In their 20s,
Just people.
Just people. Who have got nothing to do with these ancient enmities.
Nothing at all. They're just getting on with their life. I was meant to be in Israel later this month. I won't be going. I had a little break for like 4 or 5 days there. But that ain't happening, of course. Anyway, the important thing is stay safe, be kind to each other. Neil, I'll see you Wednesday. Looking forward to it.
Yes, sir.
Already. Bless you for everything you do.
You're
Until
welcome.
then,
Good afternoon.
take care. Try and stay out of trouble.